This is a pilot conversation that may never happen again, but right now this is a pilot. And my idea is to bring friends and relatives together who happen to own companies, different kinds of companies. We all do different things. I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm just going to introduce these guys. From my angle, like a Kevin DeNorscia up in the top left-hand corner. Kevin owns a company called Green Door Consulting. I'll let him fill you in on that. Paul Turano is my brother. He's down to the left. He owns a couple of restaurants called Cook in Massachusetts. And then I've got Monte. Can I call you Montgomery for this, Monte, or do you want me to just go by Monte?
Go for it.
Okay, and Monte is an architect, and I'm already getting, like, I keep thinking about your old company name. You changed it. It's Monte French Design
Studio.
Design Studio. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So Monte lives in my neighborhood. Paul lives in my neighborhood. Kevin was arrested for stalking in my neighborhood, but we invited him in anyway. So, guys, thanks for being here. I'm just going to tee this up and say I wanted to bring friends together who own businesses, who can come together and talk about business-related things to help each other. And I hope the people listening get some value out of it. I've joined different groups over the years, met some nice people, but I wanted to, rather than have a formal CEO Vistage type of group, I wanted to do something like this where we have different friends come on, maybe on a monthly basis. So that's kind of where I was looking to go with this. We do have a topic today, but before I jump in and say anything else, do you guys want to make any comments or tell anybody a little bit about what you do or who you are? And you don't have to be overly formal. None of us are dressed properly today, so I don't really care what you say.
I think I'm well dressed. I think Kevin should start.
Since I'm the worst dressed of the group, I have to go
you have
first.
the powder blue. I love it.
Yeah, the powder blue to go with the powder blue wall. I love that.
I was trying to just blend in like a chameleon. Yeah. Sure. So, my career started in banking, and most of my professional life was spent in various roles in banking. And boy, bankers love these networking events and the networking groups and referral groups, and so. My advice that was given to me was always, well, you got to get involved in this, weekly group or this referral group. So I've been in a lot of those things, and they all have that same philosophy, givers gain. The reality is givers get exhausted. And it's, we talked a little bit earlier that, these networking groups are typically groups of professional salespeople that are trying to sell each other stuff that no one's authorized to purchase. Or they all want to, get through the sales group to talk to the purchasing manager or the marketing guy. And it's exhausting because there's just not a lot of real business that was ever coming back to me. So, over the years, you try and find some strategic partnerships that there's some cross purpose where you're actually trying to help somebody. And that's why I thought that this idea that Dave had was certainly worth exploring. I don't think any of you guys will help me on any level, but I'm open to trying.
Hey, Kev, while you're on that, do you think you could introduce me to some high level banking professionals?
No, because none of them will take my call anymore.
Okay, good. All right. Who do you want to go next?
I want Monte to go.
All right, Monte.
Daggum. Yeah, I mean, my background is actually, I spent a lot of my younger years in construction and stuff like that. I went to college for a couple of years right out of high school, was an iron worker for a little bit and kind of did a few things and was in the Navy for 6 years. So that kind of evolved, and I'd always contemplated being an architect. So after I got out of the Navy, that's what I pursued. And here I am. So I've been doing this for 20 years. And it really is my dream job. It was kind of hard to get to this point, but I think what I've realized over the past few years, even since I've started my own business, is that a lot of people, it's a trust-based thing. And I think that that's a lot of what networking is about, building trust. So people want to meet you. They want to know you. They want to feel like that they can trust you on a personal level and on a business level. So I think a lot of that is kind of where I come from, and how I build my relationship with my clients and how we do business is building trust. I don't really do a whole lot of networking events, but you know, when we do work with clients, I think that that's how word spreads quickly, is like the trust factor. They know that you're going to get it done. You're going to, you know, take care of their business, so on and so forth. So I think a lot of that is kind of really the core of what we do, or why we do it. So I don't know if that I think that that's going to parlay into what we talk about today.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Paul, you've been on before, so you only have 30 seconds. Actually, 20 seconds.
In my industry, the networking groups are all just strictly groups that try and sell. There's only in the last, I'd say this last year with the pandemic is the first time we've actually have networked with a bunch of my peers where it's not a competition. We're not trying to see who's better than one another. We're just trying to find ways to help each other through this time. And, you know, I always dodge the networking groups because there's always someone calling to sell me some fry oil the next day that never leaves me alone. Like I'm going to change their life. So I'm a big dodger of it. I'd rather just help people and learn from other people. Yeah, that's kind of where my head's at.
Well, I don't expect that you're going to get a lot out of this then based on that. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. The first, and we didn't prep for this. We kicked around ideas. And the first thing I thought would make sense to talk about, and for anyone who's listening that's potentially going through this or has gone through it, I think you'll enjoy it. At some point in each of our lives, in each of our careers, we decided to go off on our own. And for me, I'll just tee this up. I wanted to do it a long time ago, and I didn't have the guts to do it. And I've talked about it in the past, and I'm not going to go rehash those stories again, but it was a hard decision mentally to make. And it was never really, it was one formulating what the hell I wanted the business to be. And then it was all that background work that I didn't understand. Like, how do I actually set up a company? What kind of paperwork do I need to file? How the hell am I going to get somebody to pay me to do what I do when it's not even defined? So the idea of doing it was so overwhelming that I delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. And then finally, when I did it, and it's crazy because I started 7+ years ago. And what I thought the business was going to be is it's there, but it keeps evolving. Like different components get added to it. And there's just something so liberating about being able to do my own thing. I'm not necessarily confined by the restrictions or the constraints of somebody else's ideas or limitations. So for me, it took me a while, but 7.5 years in, I'd do it all over again. But I just thought like we should talk about, for those that might be thinking, I don't want to work for anyone else anymore. That was the other thing. I didn't want to work for anybody else. I worked at companies and I had some great bosses along the way and some shitty bosses along the way, with all due respect to them. They fueled me to not ever have a boss anymore. And I look back now and I have no regrets, and I love being out on my own, but it took me a while to get there. So I just wanted to kick off with that, and we don't have to go in any particular order, but I'm curious to hear how you guys decided. What compelled you to say, I want to do my own thing?
Dave, before you move on, and I've heard your story, I don't know, 1,500 times, and
you still hate it.
I still hate it. I don't buy it. What do you think was the biggest thing that was holding you back from making that jump? Because you said you thought about it for years, and again, I know you have, because we've talked about it so many times. Yeah. But what was that thing that what was that voice saying in your head that was holding you back?
If I could be totally raw about it, it was money. It was money. It was the idea for me of how long can I go without making any money before I'm saying I'm going to give up. And the crazy part is I've never had a money issue, except when I was younger. I had no money. I had zero money. But then as I built my career and I started to figure out how to do well in a career, I saved money. But it was the idea of not having that steady check come in that paralyzed me. So, the idea, well, can you go a month without making a paycheck? Can you go 3 months without making a paycheck? And mentally, like I had to get myself, could I go 2 years without making a paycheck? The crazy part is I had checks before my company was an official company. But in my head, that's what held me back, is how long is it going to take for money to actually come? So that's really what it was. It was paralyzing. And I look back, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Why did I let that get in my way? You know, so that was my thing.
I'll jump in. I was the total opposite. I was 26. I didn't really have any real responsibilities in my own world. I did. And I just thought to myself, like, I'll just wing it. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to, you know, get my dream going, and I'll figure it out as I go. And that's kind of how I did it, because I was 26, and you can do that when you're 26. You don't have the responsibilities behind you. And that's what I did.
But why?
Why did you passion?
Why did you decide? We grew up in the same house, for God's sakes.
Well, I never wanted to be poor. But I believed in what I was doing, and I believed that I was pretty good at it. And I think it's probably never having played sports. You know, when a kid goes out and plays sports and sees that they're actually good and they're getting some attention, that was what I got when I was working. So, you know, I thought, you know, people thought I was pretty good at it. And then I started believing I was pretty good at it. And then I started liking the game. And I thought, geez, I can play in my own game, and I can coach my own team. And then maybe I can own the team. And that was what I did. It's what I'm still doing.
Let me comment on that. This is something that constantly comes up when I'm coaching clients. It always ends up coming back to that. Like, do you actually believe in yourself? Do you believe in what you do? And I think it took me longer than it took you. You wanted to do this at like 5.
Yeah.
You wanted to cook when you were like, right. I didn't know I was so busy finding ways not to work that I never became good at anything until I was, I don't know, I'd say 26, 27, where I actually started to figure out that responsibility is okay, and you can actually work hard, and it's not a bad thing to actually learn something. But it wasn't until I think it got to the point you had said other people said, oh, well, you're pretty good at that. It was when other people started to notice me, like, holy crap, you're actually pretty good at that. It shot the shit out of me. And that's what gave me my belief that maybe I should do my own thing. Maybe I don't need to be in this environment anymore. And so it's interesting, because belief to me is what also can hold people back. But I don't want to cut anybody else off here. So Monte, what's going through your head? Kevin deferred to me, so he's going to have to go last, because he threw it right back in my face.
I think it's a lot of this similar things, but for me, you know, when I got into architecture, I didn't want to just be like a guy that did one thing. So like in architecture, you can be a great designer, or you can be a good manager, or you could be a guy that knows how to put buildings together. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be a guy that could do all those things to some degree. You know, some things you do better than others, but to be well-rounded. So like, that was always my mission. And as I started moving down that, I found that I was doing well. You know, I got good feedback, and, you know, that was encouraging to me. I never thought about opening my own firm. But the thought that was going through my mind was, you know, I'd like to get on a partner path, you know, become a partner in an office or whatever the case is. And then, you know, there was a few opportunities that popped up where I got involved in writing proposals. I saw how much these things were going out the door for. And I'm like, that's some pretty good money. I could probably do that project by myself. And it just kind of evolved literally overnight. It was nothing that was ever on my mind. It just kind of, on the train ride home one night, I'm like, these people really trust me. I learned how to cover all these bases, except for, you know, administrative things that, you know, I don't care to even know, but I have to. You know, it just really, on a train ride home, I was like, I think I can do this. I just convinced myself, and literally the next day I just said, I'm doing it.
And that was it?
And that was it.
So how long had you thought about it? Like 24 hours?
Yeah, probably 24 hours. And then, you know, of course it takes discussions with family, and, you know, the biggest concern is like what you guys have said, money, making sure you can support your family, because I wasn't 26, I was 42, 43. So trying to do that at 43, you've got tons of responsibility with kids and mortgage and everything else. So making sure that what you're doing is not going to handicap your family. Like you said, can you handle not getting paid for a few months or whatever the case is? And so you have to convince yourself that the backlog of what you're doing can support the family, and that you're convinced that you have the ability to carry this through. It's not just a whim. I think it's easier to do it when you're younger. You can take a chance. You can survive that chance if it doesn't work out. When you're in your mid 40s, you probably can still survive the chance. But if you spend 10 years doing it, is another thing I had to think about. Like, if I spend 10 years doing this and it doesn't work out, I'm in my mid 50s, am I still marketable?
Right.
And I think in the architecture world, because I've built up a good network of people that trusted me, it gave me the confidence to say, yes, in 10 years, if this doesn't work, I know a lot of people who to this day still will call me up and say, hey, we would like to observe your office. I'm not going to do that, but it's still there. So I think that, it was encouraging for me. It was encouraging that my wife, family supported me, and also a good group of friends that supported me that allowed me to get out there and do it. It really was an overnight thing. And I think it was just, wanting to be on a leadership path and being well-rounded kind of helped nudge me into that position.
So you started yours just around when I started mine. Was it 2013?
January of 2014. I wanted to do it towards the end of 2013, but, I think I was finishing a project, of course, bonus time was around the corner. Don't want to miss that. And kind of let all those things play out. I'd already made my decision by November. I was actually already working on the project in November. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of, and then it went into working 14-hour days and exhausting. It was pretty intense.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, Kev, you're up.
Well, interesting from, on my end was, the money piece was not a concern. My wife was, working full time. She was carrying the benefits. There was not a ton of pressure on me to earn out of the gate from the money piece. But for me, I think the biggest thing that was holding me back was this massive fear of failing. And failing in such a, in my mind, such a public way. I had spent 25 years in banking, and I felt like I kind of maxed out there. And, so in the banking world, probably similar to some of your guys' industries, the only, you just move to a different bank and you change your job, or you go to a different, location, and you can, go the retail route or the commercial route. And I tried it all. And I had built up a pretty good reputation in the industry. I was miserable. And again, Dave's heard this story a million times. I was miserable in my banking career. And I knew I wanted to do something, but it was safe. And it wasn't the money piece. The money piece was safe. It was the reputational risk of going out and saying, planting my flag and saying, I'm starting my own business. And then 6 weeks later saying, I have failed in my own business. I got nowhere else to go. And part of that was, concern about how others would view me. And a lot of it was concerns of how I would view me. Like, oh, I guess I'm stuck in this, in this banking world forever. I was, again, I didn't have that pressure to earn immediately. And in fact, I always love when me and Dave are working together, and he tells this story about the courage it took for him to do this, and no clients, no money, no, mortgage payment, all this stuff. And then I get up and tell my story, and I say, I did nothing courageous. There was nothing brave about what I did. I literally backdoor scenes, worked out a deal with someone before I even gave my notice. So I knew that I had something waiting for me with a client. In fact, it became Dave and I's first shared client, and it was a great relationship. But I had that all set up before I, made my courageous statement saying I'm going to start my own business. I had a client waiting for me, so it was the weakest inspirational story ever.
Smart.
But as soon as I did that, I realized that that's what I was supposed to be doing. Dave knows, and Paul, you might know, but I've always had a passion for coaching, and it's just always been athletics. I've been a high school wrestling coach for 12 years now, and so I've always felt that was what I was supposed to be doing, was to help make these high school kids better human beings. And when I realized, when I started my own business, that it's the same thing, it's the same principle. Instead of teaching someone how to do a headlock, it's teaching them how to have the confidence to have a real conversation. And the principles are the same, the passion's the same. The only difference is I can't beat up my clients, but I can beat up the wrestlers if I need to. So, but it's been a process where much like I work with my clients building confidence, I had to do that with me first before I was able to really open up and be of any value to the people that I was working with.
Yeah, and for those who don't know Kev, he and I do a lot of the same things. Technically, we're competitors, but we have partnered on projects before, and he focuses primarily in the banking space. But we've been able to kind of leverage each other over the years with just advice, or if I need to kick something around. I mean, we don't talk as much. I mean, we probably talk twice a week now, but we used to talk on a daily basis, just running ideas by one another. I have a question though. You guys, so here's what I'm hearing from all of you, because I feel the same way, is that what Paul said about the belief, like this is who you are. What you're doing is not a job. It's something that you get paid to do. And it takes a lot of responsibility and time and investment. I'm sure there's a crap load of headaches, but it's who you are. So I just, is that important in your minds? Like, if you're going to go out and start your own thing, should it be in your blood, or should you go chase something for the money? Should you go do something because it's a good opportunity? I suppose you could succeed in both ways, right?
I'll jump on that. When we talk about money and responsibility, when I went to see a broker about buying my first restaurant, the guy looks at me and he said, "This place is tiny. Is this really something you want to do?" And I said, "Yes, I'm going to do it." And he said, "How much money do you think you're going to make in this place?" And I think I was making around 65, 70,000. I was, 25 when I went to approach this. And I looked at him, and we've had these conversations. I said, "Hey, look, if I can make 35 grand and start my own thing, I'll figure it out." And he looked at me, he goes, "What kind of an asshole would buy a business to make 35 grand?" And I was just stumbling. And I said, I'm like, well, that's not my goal.
You slowly raised your hand.
If I could just cover my expenses of that Honda Accord, then I'm going to make it work. Yeah. And I gave him a deposit. I walked out the door, and I felt so liberated. I felt like I had just won the Super Bowl.
35, baby.
I'm going to be a rock star in this. 35 grand. That was my goal. And I think that year I might have made 70, which had topped what I had made the year before. I mean, I was a kid, and I still felt like there's no stopping me. I can do anything.
Right. But it has less to do with the money though, even though
it had nothing to do with the money. I will say I have these conversations a lot lately. It still has nothing to do with the money.
Yeah. I mean, money's important. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't get paid to do it, like in the same way. But right. I think what fuels me is I love it. If I'm at work and I'm talking to a client, I mean, Monte, you called me yesterday. I mean, if Paul, we just talk about stuff. It's like, it's just there. It's in conversation. I could talk about it forever. And I know you guys are all the same way, but I mean, Kev, you're a natural coach. You coach wrestling for like peanuts because you love to coach. And so much of what you do weaves right into your work. Monte, I mean, you and I used to talk at the baseball field back when the boys were little, yep. Right as you were going out on your own. And I really didn't know you, but I'm like, this guy freaking loves what he does. Like, you can talk about it forever. You've come over to my house and like, oh, you should do this.
I could put anyone to sleep. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's who you are. I mean, how important is it? I mean, if you're going to go do this and take these chances, like Paul, it didn't matter. Like the guy's calling you an asshole and you're like, yeah, you know, I'm doing it. Thank you.
Stupid.
Right. No, but I mean, it's like, I don't care what you think of me. This is what I'm going to do. And here we are, what, 18 years later? I don't know how many years it's been, 16 years later?
Almost 20.
Yeah, 20 years later. It's like, you know, how much purpose do you have? You know, should you have purpose? Monte, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it, if you go out on, in most cases, I think if you go out on your own, start your own business for the money, you're setting yourself up for failure. That's my opinion. It has to be like the core of who you are, because that's what people are going to look at. They're like, is this guy legit? Yep. I mean, people can read you. They can read, you know, are you about this or are you about just making money? It's pretty clear. You know, whether people are looking for those indicators or they kind of subconsciously pick up on that, they can tell. They can tell, like, is this guy really into it? Like, does he really want to do what he loves? I think it's easy to tell. People pick up on it within a few minutes.
I agree with you. I mean, Monte just bought a house in our neighborhood. Paul, have you been over there? He invited the whole neighborhood. He didn't invite
I've been over. He just didn't know it.
Oh, they weren't home? They weren't home? No,
he's actually downstairs right now.
Yeah. Nobody goes there because of COVID, but Monte gave me a COVID, you know, mask tour. But even when you were walking me through the house, I mean, you take such pride in like, I remember the lighting, like those little lights behind. I love those little lights in the ceiling. And you were explaining why you chose those. I'm like, damn it, I don't have those. I went with the big lights, but like just your level of detail, you can tell it's just who you are. You're not just, you know, making drawings. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's a disease for sure.
So, all right. So,
you know what's funny, Dave, about the money is, you know, and again, you know, I get more excited when I get a check that someone actually made it payable to me, like than what the dollar amount is. Yeah. Like, I look at that and I say, oh my God, someone actually sent me a check for what I do. And that's what, you know, we've talked about that feeling, like, wow, we've either totally bamboozled somebody or they actually believe that we can help them. And so for me, the zeros are important, but it's the fact that someone's actually put their trust in me and believes that I can help their organization. That's where the money fuels me. It's not the amount, it's the fact that it's made payable to me.
Well, you know, I relate to that, Kev. You know, like the work that I've done over the years is me. It's my personality. It's my experiences. It's my failures. It's my, you know, whatever is going on in my head. And then the hundreds of books that I read, it's everything. So when a client says, I want to work with you, it's very personal. So I totally relate to that. It's like they actually buy in to what I think or what my experience is or how I relate to them. They want that. And then it feels like my level of responsibility to them is that much greater. It's very personal. And I don't know about you guys here, but like, I kind of do know about you guys here, but like, there's no clock. There's no, well, it's 5 o'clock. I can't take a call. There's no, it's 10 o'clock. There's no, it's Sunday. And some people would say, well, you got to learn to shut off, but it never feels like work. I love it. You know, Monte, you and I were texting last night, you know, about, you know, what you're interviewing and things like that. It's like, if you kept the text going, I'd keep the answers coming. I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, does it ever feel like work to you guys? Well, I know you. I know.
It does, but I think the high and the disease piece is, you know, I work with the public. So as people come in, just like what Kevin said, I look and I think, geez, 300 people wanted to come here for what I provide. And it's a drug. That piece of it is a drug. Like, they're not going next door. They're coming to me. That is exciting.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you, Paul, is like, you know, I as a kid, I worked in restaurants and, you know, clubs and stuff like that a ton. And, you know, so I think that's something I always wondered about, like, what is the reward for you? But I guess that kind of answers it.
It's kind of what it is, you know, and then if you start making money on top of it, it's an even bigger reward, and you're always, and it's never ending. It's, you know, you're never finished. I think that's, it's a plus and a minus. It's a major plus and a major minus. It's like you're constantly trying to beat the day before. It's not money, but it's like, these people keep coming in. Let me see if I can get 5 more. It's, you know, that's the exciting.
But I mean, in my mind, what you're doing is also an aspect of art. So you're creating your, you know, you're putting out your creation, the thing that you've designed in a sense, and you're putting it out there. And then the reward is like, people respond to it in a positive way. You know, like, that's got to be very fulfilling, because it's like a very quick.
That's what it is. Yeah, it is. It's so fulfilling. It's, you know, if we have a busy day, I'm like, look at this. It's never about the numbers are, you know, probably like how an athlete can gauge their value. You know, the fact that I get paid is exciting when I get paid, but like, for me, it's like, look at all these people coming in here. This is unbelievable. And I told them that I love these items, and that's what they're buying. I'm only putting out there what I like, and other people like it too. And that's still very fulfilling every day. And that doesn't get old.
Right.
Yeah. I think that has to be there. You know, that has to be there. There's so much. I don't provide food, but if I provide an idea, or if I challenge somebody to the point where all of a sudden a light bulb goes off, or they start to believe in themselves in a different way, or they try something and it works, it's like, oh my God, I was able to give somebody something that they get to keep. Like, that's now a tool for you for the rest of your life. Now you know something, and you're doing something that maybe you never knew you could do before. Like, it's like like you said, Paul, it's almost like a drug. Monte came to my house. Monte, I don't know when it was probably 3 years ago. I was like, what do I do with this part of my house? And then you came over and you're like, you know, remember, I was actually working at a desk, and you're going through my laundry room and my bathroom, and you're taking measurements, and we're talking. And then you came back, and when I was serious about adding on to the house, like, you drew, I remember you sending me you did all the work, and what you envisioned and what you talked about and what you put down is exactly what it looks like. And I think about that all the time. I'm sitting in one of the rooms. I'm like, Monte came over here and thought about this before I thought about that. He brainstormed what this should look like and how this should flow based on a conversation we have, and it actually exists. So to me, it feels so much more, I don't know, meaningful than, I just bought this house and this room is over here. You know what I mean? It's more personal.
Yeah.
You've got to feel that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I that's the part I enjoy. Like, when I get to do something like that, the tough part about architecture is, like, you know, something like that happens relatively quick. But when we do projects, it takes 4 years before they're actually done. Right. So there can be trying times during that process. But, you know, on smaller projects, you get the quicker reward. But I think the real reward for me is working with people and creating something that they can, like, if we can convey it to them in a way that they get it and they're excited about it, then we feel like we did our job beyond what they expected. Because a lot of times there's architects that will create something that, you know, isn't well exhibited or well designed to a degree where a client would get it. But when we can do that and a client gets it and they get excited, that's rewarding to me, because I know that the actual portfolio piece of it isn't going to happen for 3-4 years. You know, it takes time. So those are those small pieces that we really like. And I think it's kind of the same thing with you, Dave, is like, you know, when you're working with people and you're able to open their mind up to another idea or a way of thinking or doing something, that's got to be rewarding as well.
It's like rocket fuel.
It's a hook to, you know, still staying in business for yourself. I think that's ultimately when you go into business, you're like, can I be successful doing this? And these are the things that tell you, yes, you can.
I was talking to a friend who doesn't live in this area, and we reconnected, and he was telling me how excited he was to be in a position to retire in the next like 5 years. And I thought, that is so sad. And he's younger than me. That's all I kept thinking is, you want to retire? Like I never want to retire. And like, even though money is the thing that caused me to be afraid up front, it's not the reason I would continue to work on the back end. It's like, it is so fulfilling. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I want to be doing this when I'm 85 years old. I want to still be relevant. I had a client, I don't know if he's listening right now, but I'll tell it without exposing him. But he sent me a text the other night, and he had said, it was just basically how he respects me and things like that. And he views me as a father figure. And I was sitting on the couch and I started laughing at, I can't believe this guy's saying this. We're like the same age. That's what I'm thinking. And my son, and Chris, who you guys know, my son Chris is sitting next to me. We're watching the Bruins game, and Chrissy's on my left. And they start laughing at me for laughing. And I'm like, what? They're like, you could be his father. He's like 30 years old. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I really could be his father. But like, in my mind, I still, like, in some crazy way, I love being relevant to somebody who's 30 or 25 or my kids. And I still want to be relevant when I'm in my 80s. I don't want to retire. I feel like that's sad. Like, if I want to get out of what I'm doing, if I want to leave what I'm doing, I shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's the reason I picked this topic is, I think you're wasting your time if you can't find a way to love what you do. You don't have to be the best of the best, but if you can't find a way to love it, don't do it. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your energy. You're compromising other parts of your life. If money's important, go make money doing something else. Just don't waste your years not enjoying something. And maybe that's unreasonable, but I don't think it is. What do you guys think?
You know what I heard a little bit earlier when Dave, when you were sharing the story about Monte and then, you know, I hear it in Paul. We're in four, you know, technically we're in, 3 or 4 different industries and very different industries. Yet our best clients are the ones that just kind of get out of the way and let us tell them what we need, what they need, and deliver what they need. And whether it's, Monte looking at your house and saying, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, here's the drawing, and you saying, you're right. Or, whether it's us, Dave, you and I in our businesses meeting a client and listening to what's going on and saying, look, here's what you need. The worst clients are the ones that say, well, here's what I want you to do. I need you to do this. And I know how to, it's the ones that just get out of the way and trust us. And that's what gives me the most passion. And, when I go to a restaurant, Paul, if there's something that says chef's recommendation or a tasting menu or honestly a flight of anything, I'm all over that. Like, this is what the chef thinks I should eat. That's what he knows better than I do. That's what I want. And it's that same concept. It's the people that open themselves up and say, yeah, I trust you. Do what's right for me and my business. That those are the best relationships. And the ones that say, here's what I want, you do this. Those are always short-term and unfulfilling. So the passion comes from having some creativity and feeling like, I know what to do. I know what's necessary. Will you allow me to do this?
Yeah.
And but Dave, you're spot on. There's way more money out there in other venues, but if there's no passion, you know, you're looking at the wrong end of the problem. And if you're out there and you're thinking, I want to do my own business, I want to get started, don't worry about the will it make money. Worry about, could you see yourself doing it forever, and or at least for the foreseeable future. And ask your family, ask your friends, ask them, what you're passionate about. And if they can't tell you, then you're probably not passionate enough. Dave, you shared the story. I know I've heard Paul's story. If anyone had asked Dave, hey, what do you want to do? When you go out on your own, what do you want to do? Like, they would all tell Dave, well, you've been talking about this forever. Paul, you've been talking about being a chef since you were, 5 years old. Why would you go out and do, electrical work? It just, people will know what you're passionate about if you just ask them, because if you're not talking to everybody about it, you're probably not ready.
I just want to jump on your passion piece, Kevin, because you're 100% right. I actually met with a guy last night who's an artist because I want to do some artwork at the restaurant. I've asked, I've talked to a few different ones, and maybe Monte, if you know anyone good, let me know. But this guy comes in, he shows me a couple pictures, and I can just see it all over his face. He's like, look, I don't even want to throw you a number. Like, this is what I have all these ideas. And he was so into it and just flashed me a few pictures. And after about 5 minutes, I said, you know what? I think you get exactly what I'm looking for. I know what I would like. I don't know what I want. I'm like, and I feel, I just talking to him, like, you're so into this and you've just shown me enough that I believe in you. And I'm like, just throw me some sketches. I'm like, and we'll do it. Yep. We'll do it. And he's like, you need to, I'm like, don't beat the dead horse about the money. I think it's going to all work out. And I really left that conversation, and we have a mutual friend, and he's like, look, I think this went really well. I'm like, it did go really well, because he's so into this that he doesn't want to fail. He wants to give me something. I go, look, just like you're building, Monte, it's like, you're going to put something here that a lot of people are going to see. If it's great, people are going to know you did it. And if it sucks, I'm not going to put it up, So I don't know. But just listening to him, I'm like, you're so into this, and you're like the color palette. I'm like, that this is going to be good. I'd be shocked that if it wasn't.
But there has to be a point where passion and talent intersect. And I know, Paul and Dave, we spent a little time together over the summer, and I love cooking. I'm passionate about it. And we talked about it. I couldn't do what you do. I don't want to do it for in a restaurant. I just like doing it because it makes me feel good. But I'm not talented enough to do it at that level. I'm passionate about music. I can't play an instrument. There's passion, but there needs to be some talent behind it too. There's got to be that cross section. And I think that, you can have all the passion in the world, but you also have to have some talent and some results in it too.
But Kev, from everybody, you weren't, in order to develop talent, it takes the willingness to practice. If you're interested in something and you're passionate about something, you're more likely to put time into it. You know what I mean? I don't know that any of us were born with this natural ability to do what we do right now. It took a lot of trial and error, a lot of shitty burnt bologna sandwiches out of the toaster oven for Paul. And I'm sure Monte, some crappy drawings at some point. And Kevin, you and I, like, flopping in front of a room. You're not just born to do it. It's like, if you're passionate about it, are you going to put the time into it? And that takes me off on a different tangent. Like, I don't know. At some point, when I think about, and this is about going off on your own, but have you put the time in to develop not only the talent, the skills to do it? Are you worth what you think you're worth? Have you put the time in? Isn't that what it comes down to? It's like, yeah, I love it, but I'm not going to put the time into it. Is that what holds people back? I don't know. I mean, what's your take on that? Is it natural talent?
Well, I think that goes right back towards, it is, about the conversation about starting your own business. It goes right back towards that fear factor. because, you know how much work it took to get to that point to even consider doing it. Like you just said, you started out and you drew some really crappy stuff. You got criticized, you got, laughed out of the room, whatever the case may be. And you're like, well, I don't want to relive that situation, so like that factor is always there, and you're lying to yourself if it's not. Everyone's got that. There's the rare few that don't, that have, that they were just born with it. It's like athletes that are born with that talent, and sometimes they lack the work ethic. So then it doesn't really materialize like it should. So I think sometimes it's better that you have a ton of passion and you really have to develop that talent, because then it means it's something that you've poured a lot of effort and your soul into to make it happen. I think it makes it more realistic and more, I think that's what it is for me, starting my own business. It's something that I had to pour a ton of effort in. And like I said, I didn't start doing it until after I got out of the Navy. Like I was talking to my wife the other day. She's like, I didn't even know you could draw. And then all of a sudden you told me you want to go to school for architecture. And she was like, I don't even know how this happened. So, I think that those things do just happen sometimes.
So you guys, so Monte and Paul are different than Kevin and I, in the sense that Kevin and I it's him, it's me, no employees. And we've worked together, but as separate entities coming together to work on projects. You guys you've hired people over the years. And all of the clients I have hired people over the years. Some of them have hundreds and hundreds of people that work in their organizations. Some of them have 10. But not everybody that they hire shares that same belief, that same passion. And I was talking to a client yesterday about just people, like even getting different departments to buy in. You go into some companies, or I'll go into some companies, and it's, wow, we get this department spinning like a top. They love what they do. They believe in each other. They work hard. And I was talking to a client yesterday about how do you take that same thing and translate it into this department over there without you acting like you have a separate company over here. You're the same company. How do you take that same culture and work ethic and start over here and give that to them, provide that to them, create that for them? And a lot of it comes down to, you've got to be patient. Every time I take on a new client, they don't know what I know. They don't know where I've been, even though they might think it. And they don't know what's in their way yet, oftentimes. So it's like, it first starts with me, where I got like, do you have the self-awareness to recognize where you're at right now? And if you're aware, then I can help you. But if you're not, it becomes very difficult. And I have to have the patience to allow them to know where they're not at. I have to have the patience to accept all the things in their way, even when they're not ready to see those yet. And so every time I take on a new client, my point is I've got to have the patience to start from scratch with them without trying to speed up the process. You guys hire people. Now, Kev, but before I go on, do you know where I'm going with that?
Yep.
Okay. Well, you guys hire people. None of them are coming in knowing what you know about your organization or how you got there, unless you tell them. How do you get them to that point? Because you could really, if you do a great job, you could be developing future business, not only great employees, but you could change somebody's life. You could develop a future business owner if you play this right. How, do you know where I'm going with it, or am I just rambling?
I get it.
You get it? How do you translate it into people? How do you, can you?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, especially in my world. I mean, it's not a lucrative career. And there's not a lot of people getting into it now thinking like, I'm going to work my way up the ladder. It just doesn't, it really becomes, it's transaction. Like, I'm going to give you something and this is just what I need in return. And for my employees, it's just comes down to like, I'm not trying to make them me. They're not trying to be me. There's no envy on either side. It's just, I'm going to treat you well. This is my new approach. I'm going to treat you really well. And I'm going to tell you what I want. And I'm going to get rid of all the obstacles in between to get that. And in return, like, it's kind of a transaction. Like it's hard. It's, I think I'm just one of those people, I'm kind of in the trenches with them. And I try and listen to them more, and I get more, I have more empathy now. And I think I don't even know where I'm going with it, but the staffing is the major issue. It's always the major issue. And lately I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to find more people like myself. I don't consider myself wildly talented by any stretch of the imagination. I'm like, you know what? Let's stop looking for the talent. Let's look for the people with the work ethic. Let's give them what they need and bring them along that way. And I think that's what's been working for me. I mean, I have one restaurant with some talent, the other restaurant without the talent. The restaurant without the talent is a pleasure to work in. The restaurant with the talent is more of a struggle.
That's a good topic for another conversation. That's a meaty topic. But I want to be respectful of your time, guys, because it's coming up on 10 o'clock. Let's talk about that. If you guys are willing to do this again, I think we should talk about that. Monte, just real quick on what I just asked, and then I'm going to ask you guys to, if you were to give advice to somebody contemplating the idea of going off on their own, what advice would you give them? But before you answer that, what's your take on just trying to get your beliefs and your story into the people that you hire?
I mean, the first question is make sure you know why. Why are you doing this? And if it ever, I think, has to do with money, I think, you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. Like, I'm usually pretty upfront. I've had a couple friends come to me and say, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, so why? And they're like, well, I kind of, I don't like this guy at work. He's really bugging me. And I'm like, well, that could be a reason why, but like, really, why? Do you really want to do this? Like, do you want this to be your life? Because when it's your business, it's your life. If you're telling me it's for money, it's wrong. If you're telling me, you found a guy that wants you to redo his bathroom, it's probably ill-advised because, okay, what are you going to do after that bathroom? Like, you got it. Why? Why are you doing it?
Yep, I agree with you. All right, go around real quick. Advice. Somebody, so you kind of just gave that answer, but anything in addition to that, where you would say to somebody, you should take the risk. Like, okay, they do believe in it, but like with me, I believed in it, and I had this unnecessary fear of paperwork and filling out applications and how long can I sustain myself, and it was all bullshit. To be honest with you, it was just because none of it became a problem. But what advice would you give to somebody like me who's got it but just delaying it?
So I'll go first, and my advice is simple, and it ties back into what my biggest fear was when I got into it, which was the fear of failure. And I would say that without failure, there can't be any success. And those that know me know that I have a track record of epic failure, and each failure has gotten me closer to where I wanted to be. So the one thing that held me back from doing it was the one thing I needed to accept. And without sounding like a dumb inspirational poster hanging in the break room, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure's one step closer to actually achieving success.
Somebody's phone is on. That's inexcusable.
It's not. It rings on the computer now.
We know whose it was now. I set you up. Go ahead, Kev. I'm sorry.
That was it. That was my crescendo. That was okay. my big epic conclusion that Paul ruined.
Sorry.
I agree on the failure piece, though. The bottom line is, if you're not willing to trip and look bad once in a while, you're not going to get to where you want to go anyway. There's nothing better that, like, something that probably scared me 10 years ago. It's like, I want to fall down. I'm okay with this falling apart, because then I get to figure out why I fell apart, instead of like, I need to be perfect for these people. No, not at all.
And it's a great story. And Dave, me and you love telling stories. And every time something terrible happens, I think that's going to make a great story sometime.
Yeah, I've told my share of great embarrassing stories. You guys are like the small group of people that ends up hearing, I got to tell you this one. I love the colossal failure stories. Paul, what about you? And then we'll wrap it up. Just what if somebody was contemplating the idea of, I think I want to do this, but I don't know. What advice would you give them?
Well, not just for my industry. I think are you one of those people that's willing to go to practice every day, or do you just want to play in the game? If you just want to play in the game, don't bother doing it. If you're willing to go and practice every day, and you're willing to get beat up, and you're willing to get back up and show up the next day, then you could probably succeed. just about any business. But if you want the shiny new outfit, you want the new pads and the new helmet, you want to go out and play on Sunday, it's probably, you shouldn't be working for yourself. That's
great advice. That's great advice. I don't know how often you guys are going to be willing to do this, but I enjoyed it. I think that I think there's so many things we could talk about, even if you can't make it one of these times. I think that there's not enough of these conversations going on. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. Any parting words, or are you good with it?
We'll never do this again.
Good.
This is a terrible idea.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it was good. It's good.
Monte, that's not a resounding good. I need more. I need you to stand up.
Fantastic, Dave.
Okay, all right. All right, guys. Well, listen, go to work. I know you got other things to do. I appreciate your time, and when you're ready, we're going to do another one of these.
Sounds good.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.